Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of the question part. Tonight we'll be answering questions. I'm here with Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff Pincin, and I'm joined by Bella, who's the namesake for the channel. And a lot of you have always asked to see Bella, and so here she is. The other dog, Max, is over there as well and might be making an appearance, but Bella is perhaps the more social one of the two.
They're both pretty social, but they have different personalities.
Different personalities,
for sure.
right.
Yeah, she's, I think, the more worried of the two.
Sure. Bella always struck me as the one more willing to just run over to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Which is why she's over here, being way too intrusive on this shot. My name's Jeff Pincin, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Delaware and Pennsylvania, and I specialize in the treatment of OCD and other anxiety disorders in private practice. And Mike couldn't join us tonight, so it's just the two of us tonight.
Very good. So we'll be answering some questions that have collected over last few weeks, months, whenever, right? Different questions. And see what we can do. Can't guarantee anything, but we'll give it a shot. See if there can be answered.
Yeah, right.
All right, so what do we got?
So the first one, very much focused on you, Dr. Grande, and your wife. I need to know if the Dr. Grande still has the giant stuffed bear his wife didn't like that he stored away. Did it survive the move? If so, use him for a stop-motion shot-for-shot remake.
Yeah, so the bear story I told in a video a while back, where I think we were all telling bear stories.
It must have been Cocaine Bear, maybe.
I think it was I feel like it was at the other house though. That
maybe
I think Cocaine Bear was here, but yeah, like Mike had a story about I think a bear on a porch.
His
or
grandfather.
Something. Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
Did you have a bear story?
Yeah, I worked at a camp and took out a bear one-handed. Is at least how I tell it.
Wrestled a bear.
Right, one-handed. Yeah.
So like short version, I bought this. I don't know. It was a long time ago, years and years ago. I bought this huge stuffed bear. I think it was from I want to say it was from Mays Landing. It was the Hamilton Mall, in Mays Landing, New Jersey. I brought it back, and it was this gigantic bear. I think back then it was like something like $25. I can't remember the price, but it was back then. It was a lot of money. Like this was going back early 90s,
Okay.
something like that. And I thought, it's for my wife, giant stuffed bear. I thought she'd be very, very happy with it. Very happy with it. But she wasn't. She wasn't. So it ended up going, it was sitting in the basement, I think, for a long time.
Yeah.
Where we used to record.
Right.
And then I forget what we were doing. I think we were cleaning out maybe to finish the basement, because we finished it. It was unfinished when we bought the house. And my wife wanted the bear to go. So I actually hid it in the shed. We had this new shed in the back. There's plenty of room still. We just got it and put it in there, and it stayed there for however long until we moved here.
Until I discovered it.
Yeah, but as it turns out, my wife found the bear, and it did not make the trip. It went to stuffed bear heaven.
Was it? Do I remember correctly that it was all moldy, or it had some kind of? It was dirty or something like that from being out in the shed and kind of in the moisture and.
I imagine. I don't know if I really looked at it too many times.
I think it had spider eggs.
Yeah.
Spider eggs. Okay. Yeah, bugs.
That's pretty gross. Yeah. I don't think I looked at it too many times. I mean, I saw it in there, but I didn't examine it. But
when would your wife have gotten rid of this bear if you hadn't tried to save it?
Oh, it was.
Would it have been day one that you got it that she would have gotten rid of it?
Oh, you mean going back years? I don't know. We had it for a long time. We had it in the old house,
right?
Because we lived in this really tiny house in Newcastle for a long time, and the bear was like took up half the space. It was huge. It was a small house.
Tolerance for the bear. Didn't like it, but I tolerated it.
Yeah, my wife tolerated it.
Yeah. I think we do need a mic.
We need a microphone
over there.
But yeah, she tolerated it. But when we finished the basement, that was it.
That was it.
But yeah, I did save him for a little while, although it was probably not a great fate being in that shed and with all the insects and whatever. Yeah, so I never really thought about it. We had a lot of people help us with the move, including professional movers and all kinds of people. So it was a lot of people going everywhere. We rented like a U-Haul
Yeah.
and hooked it up to my Toyota, and we used that for some of the mostly like smaller things. And then the movers got the big thing. So there's a lot of confusion, and I guess at some point my wife got rid of the bear without me really noticing.
Yeah, right. Well, when something goes in the shed, it's beyond. Now it's in the basement, because if it's in the shed, I mean, just forget about it.
That's a different level.
Right. That's where you put extra shingles from when you redid the roof, extra wood from when you did whatever you did, and things that just are going to get forgotten about. Maybe one day you'll use them, but definitely not a stuffed bear in the shed.
It's a pre-garbage bin, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's how I looked at it. We had like old bicycles that also, I don't know what happened to them. We had like an old weed whacker. It was like electric one with like no power.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna do with that? I think we did have propane bottles out there. They made the way in. I don't like storing propane in the house.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And like for like a torch. What else did we have in there? Like a rake. We kept a rake.
Oddly enough, we had a toilet in there.
We had a toilet. Yeah, it wasn't a toilet like that you could use. It was one that we had swapped out in the house, but it was in perfect condition. Actually, I think it was the new one. Like we put a new one in, and something went wrong. We had to go back to the old one.
Tile floor didn't work.
Right. Something happened to the floor.
Elongated bowl, and you couldn't.
Yeah. It was this whole story behind the toilet, but
Right.
it was in good condition, like new condition.
It was clean.
Yeah.
The kind of thing you expect. Maybe I'll use this again. Maybe this will go in another bathroom.
Well, if
But
you
it doesn't.
throw it away, well, it was expensive.
Yeah.
It was not, it was still in good shape. And if you throw it away, like the next day, you're going to break something
Right.
on one of the toilets. You're like, oh, where's that toilet?
Right. That's
At
the
least
law.
that's the fear. Yeah.
That's the law of home ownership.
So
But I'm going to guess you never used the toilet.
yeah, I don't know what happened to that either.
I think it went to the dump.
Yeah.
Uh, that's terrible. Yeah. I think some hardware might have been missing too. And once that happened, it's
Yeah.
like, are you ever really going to go
Right.
and find that hardware? And it was a weird toilet. It wasn't like a standard
standard,
one.
yeah.
It had a very odd mounting bracket to attach the bowl, whatever it's called,
Right.
not the bowl, but the tank
Right.
onto the, yeah. So once the hardware got lost, I was like, oh, it's not going to be fun.
Forget about it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh man.
Yeah.
I
So,
have.
yeah.
Speaking of the big stuffed bear, my sister-in-law got our daughter a giant stuffed unicorn doll. And this thing is, so my daughter's 3 years old. Maybe she got it when she was 2, just about 3, something like that. We've had it for, I think, since Christmas. So at this point, it's been 10 months maybe we've had this thing. So when I say big, it's at least 3 feet tall, if not a little bit bigger. It's huge, way too big. So imagine bringing this thing home. We had the 2 kids in the back in the car seats, and this giant stuffed unicorn in the middle. It's bigger than both their car seats. Looks like another passenger in the vehicle, and just a humorous thing. Every time I see that picture, I just laugh because there's this giant characterized unicorn in the middle of these 2 car seats, bigger than the kids, bigger than the car seats. And my daughter was super excited about it. She loves unicorns, as many young girls do. And we were like, this is great. She's going to love it, and she's going to, play with this thing, pretend with it, everything. And she did. I got the idea one night that I thought it would be cool if she thought that the stuffed unicorn, Big Unicorn is what she calls it, if she thought Big Unicorn would actually come alive at night. Okay? I thought she would really like that. I liked the idea. So our daughter was upset one night, and my wife said, just to try to cheer her up, just to try to get her to calm down, hey, let's look outside and let's just look at the stars. Let's look outside. Let's see the street lights, whatever else. And she might have said, you know what? Maybe we'll look to see if there's unicorns outside. That's what she said. Let's look outside. Maybe we'll see some unicorns. Just trying to, get her mind off of it. So I'm like, perfect. This is going to be great. So I tell my wife, look out the back door for a little bit, and then bring Naomi up to the front window. So I get Big Unicorn, go out to the front, and wait until the curtain opens up. And I'm below the bay window, and I kind of raise this thing up and just start, moving it, pretending like it's walking. And so I turn it slowly to look at it. And I'm outside. They're inside. I didn't know what was going on. I figured she was loving it. I figured she was so happy to see this thing, whatever. Turn it towards her, and at some point the curtain closes, and I'm like, this is great. Everything's great. So great. Mm-hmm. Dad of the year right here. Go inside. Not the case. Nothing is going right in that house. When my daughter saw this thing, she was terrified. My wife calmed her down a little bit and said, no, it's just Dad. See, you can see Dad down there. And then I turned it. And our daughter lost it. She was, and potentially is, convinced that this big unicorn is alive. And all because I turned it. Mm-hmm. She saw me. But once this thing turned, it was embedded in her mind, this thing's alive, and it's not friendly. So it was in her bed for the longest time. And then that happened. And it was still in her bed for a bit, but she had a lot of trouble going to sleep. So eventually it went downstairs. But then, every time she went downstairs, she swore this thing would move. She said, last time it was over there. We're like, no, it wasn't over there. But she swore it was. So she says, she'll tell us, Big Unicorn's not alive. But I don't think she believes that. I think there's still a good portion of her that's like, I think that thing's still alive. So every time she walks past it now, she says, hi, Big Unicorn. Is it okay if I play over here? And asks the Big Unicorn permission if she can play anywhere near this thing. We say, Naomi, you know that thing's not alive, right? Yeah, I know. Just a toy. Is that okay, Big Unicorn? Big stuffed animals are nothing to mess around with. I think that's my takeaway.
They're very complicated. You wouldn't think it.
No.
But they're pretty complicated. I remember I did a story a while back on, I think it was, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was Stan. This guy named Stan. I can't remember his last name. But he was one of these people who promotes this idea that like there's UFOs and aliens, and more so than that. A lot of people believe in that, but like that he's seen them, and he would stage these. I'm pretty sure they were staged. I'm like 100% sure, but he would stage these like photograph opportunities with clearly fake. A lot of people believe it, but they're clearly fake. And when you're telling the unicorn story with the head turning, it reminds me of one of the pictures he took where you could see the alien, like little green guy,
right.
like looking around the corner. And how for for us that's pretty funny because clearly it's fake, but
right.
For somebody young or impressionable, like they would think that's an alien, something that would stay with them forever. That the image
of that, right? Mm-hmm. Right, the
of
memory
him.
of that.
It is creepy. Like when you look at the picture, he's like standing there. If he's in the picture or somebody else is, I forget, but he might have been operating the doll, whatever. But it's like it does this, right around the like a door jamb, like right around the molding. You see this? Yeah,
gotta love it.
It's like the aliens. They travel all the way from outer space, right? Like what, billions, trillions of miles,
right.
or billions of trillions of light years,
right? Just to peek around the corner,
right? It's like, what is this guy doing?
That's a huge underestimation of the ability of potential aliens. That all they do is just turn corners.
Like we burned like 1 trillion gallons of fuel to get out here.
We used all the natural resources on our planet.
Many planets.
Just to get here. And this is all we're going to do.
Yeah.
Boy. You said somebody would need to be in therapy? Oh, my daughter. Yeah, that's that might be true, yeah. The comment over here was that my daughter might be in therapy for a long, long time. But, I don't, I don't know how that goes when you have a father that's a therapist. Maybe you're more messed up. I don't know. I don't know how that works. You might be right, though.
Yeah, it's funny what does it too. Like you're saying with the head turning.
Yeah.
That's really what.
I made it look as convincing as I could because I thought it was going to be a hit.
Were you like torquing the head, or did you turn the whole body?
I think it might have just been the head. I don't remember. It actually might have been the whole body, but I think all you could see was the head, and so it's just this slow turn. And if it was an abrupt turn, I don't know. Maybe that would have been different, but almost like I'm looking right at you.
Right.
Was the impression, I think. So
I was thinking if you accidentally like ripped its head off, that would have been bad too. That would have been bad too.
I don't know. She might have been like, "Oh, okay. I guess it's not alive. I guess it is stuffed."
It's not alive now.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
All right. What do you
All
got
right.
for
Next question.
Yep.
This one was pretty much made for Mike, but I don't really have an answer for this. But if you were a D&D adventuring party, what classes would you be? I assume Mike has to answer this one, but bonus points if you two decide on your own. So what classes would you be?
Yeah. The extent of my knowledge about D&D is that it stands for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Mine
It's,
too.
it's some type of game.
Yeah.
I think it involves role playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they played it on like Big Bang Theory,
I think you're right.
like on the
Yeah.
like the characters, right?
As
Like-
well as Stranger Things, the
right,
show.
Right. That's right. That's pretty much all I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they played it and they seem to be having fun. It does have an association, I think, with like people like comic books.
Sure.
Seem to be attracted.
Fantasy
Fantasy, things like
stuff,
that.
yeah.
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 But I don't know if you can win or.
I believe that there is a winner.
Okay.
From just hearing about games that have been played. There's a dungeon master, somebody who kind of helps move things along. Each person has to have a character, I believe, and then there's some kind of storytelling associated with all of that. And they go through the story, and I think there is a winner because there's different attacks, different moves, different things that you can do to other characters. I think, but yeah, I'm certain that there's a lot of people watching right now that are just shaking their head, that are just palm on their forehead, like, what are these guys doing right now? But that's my understanding of it. So what class would I be? A good one?
Mm-hmm. Good. Effective.
An effective.
An appropriate class. Yeah, if it helps at all, I have played Monopoly, and I like the little car.
You'd be the car class.
Yeah. So that's
It makes sense.
if that's
That's what you would do.
yeah. Well, instead of like a dungeon master, there's a banker.
Yeah. There you go.
It's pretty much the same game.
It's got to be. Just from knowing Mike, I do appreciate the focus for many people on the camaraderie, on the social aspect of it, because and it's certainly a stereotype, but maybe true for a good number of people. People who engage in these kind of things, or in the fantasy and that kind of world, might at times have difficulty socializing. Again, a stereotype, but it may be true for some people. So something like Dungeons and Dragons might be a good avenue to develop some better social skills, maybe work on some social anxiety. I have a client who uses it for that very reason. She enjoys it, but uses it for that very reason. And I think that's wonderful. If there's an avenue that gets somebody to experience improvement and gains in their life, more power to them. I think that's great.
I think the game also had a brief history being associated with moral panic.
Yeah.
Which is like a darker chapter, but
Right.
I think it's come past that whole thing. But, speaking of Stranger Things and like connecting back to childhood, we might have talked about this before, but Stranger Things is an interesting show because it's got the horror fantasy. Like I think I saw the first 3 seasons. I think there was a 4th season. I'm not.
4th for the first part, I think is the first part's out. They're going to do the second part.
Oh,
I
is it
believe.
like a 2-part?
I think so. I don't know if they're doing 4 and 5 or not, but yeah, there's definitely going to be something else coming.
Yeah. So I haven't seen any of the 4th, but I did see, I think all the first 3. I believe that's true. And one of the things I really liked about the show, it wasn't stunningly well written, but it did have a lot of nostalgia, especially for my generation.
Right, right.
Like there was a scene, I want to say it was in season 3, or I forget, but they were walking through like a supermarket and like all the cereals and stuff. It was the attention to detail.
Yeah.
Was just, it really brought you back
Yeah.
to that time. So it's a clever show because if you didn't care about the nostalgia, it doesn't hurt anything.
Right, right. Still engaging and
Yeah, so it was a smart, because I think young people, they can relate to it because the characters are young. And then people that are older Americans, I guess, like me, are, I can relate because like I was that age back then.
right, right.
So.
Yeah, yeah. For someone who grew up, did some growing up in the '80s, be a lot to relate to potentially.
Yeah, so I would have been like, in 1980, I would have been like 8 years old, and obviously 18 in 1990. So like teenage years, that decade, the 80s, a very important decade. And I think that Stranger Things takes place like 85,
Something like
something
that.
around there, right? Like
Yeah.
those. So like, I was like 13.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the most recent season or the third one. It was very much centered around cassette tapes, and they were playing a certain song, and that would kind of take the demons or take the bad things away, or kind of protect them from that. Which to someone in the current generation, they think of a cassette tape, and it's very vintage. It's very
Right.
unique. It carries a certain feeling with it or whatever. Someone who grew up in the '80s or even the '90s to some extent would see cassette tapes and then be like, oh, I remember those, or a Walkman, and I had one of those
When it was
and
new, right, yeah.
right, and I listened to it every day or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah. It's funny because like when I was young, we had the 45s. I had Hang On Sloopy song, 45, and a record player. It was probably a very low quality record player, and I'm sure speakers were, or one speaker, whatever it had. But yeah, I'd play that over and over. I think I had what was it? The Jim Croce. I had one of his songs, the Leroy Brown.
Okay.
It was Leroy Brown.
Was that the Big Bad Leroy Brown song? Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was Hang On Sloopy and Leroy Brown.
There you go. A side and B side.
But then the 8-tracks were also big during that time, which is, a lot of people might not know, but it was a larger cassette that had this incredibly bizarre flaw where in the middle of the song, it would change channels. I had like 4 channels or whatever they were. And you'd see like, we had a player that was this huge, which was the standard size for them back then. Like huge 8-track player. and you put it in, and like it would be like a light. I was gonna say LED, but I'm not sure it was LED.
Right, right.
And it was a light, and for each channel, like these 4 channels. And when it would go be in a song, like say channel 1, that you'd be playing a song, and then it would stop, like a click, and it would resume the song on like channel 2, whatever,
Right.
whatever the terms were, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
4, whatever. Maybe it was 8-track. I don't know if those were the tracks. I don't know what 8-track meant, but
Could you flip 8 tracks over like you could a
don't think
cassette?
so.
Okay, I was wondering if it was the 4 and then you flip it over. There's another 4.
could be. I never really messed with them that much. I don't know. But, that's possible, but
Yeah.
you could. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That was
Bar.
so they're tracks.
Okay.
Yes.
So easier to locate the songs, potentially anyway.
Yeah, but it's funny
maybe.
to cut in the middle.
Yeah.
Like that's the part I never. It's like, how is this practical? But
Right.
it really killed the whole vibe of
I'm
the
sure
song.
it
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite songs was "Love Is a Rose" by Linda Ronstadt, and we had that on 8-track, and that was not interrupted. That was like by itself. But yeah, then came the cassettes, and there was all types of different metal.
Yeah. Right.
You get really expensive.
Right.
You got a Radio Shack, which existed when I was
Right.
younger, and you buy like a 10-pack of these.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they would wear out, they would stretch,
Yeah.
and if they became twisted or anything like that,
Right. Done.
gone. Yeah, you said they were like tape. I can fix
Trying
it.
to patch it together, right?
Yeah, it was disconcerting.
Yeah.
And then when I was in high school, toward the beginning of high school, is when the CDs came out, and they were ridiculously
I
expensive.
bet they were.
Nobody could afford.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody could afford. The cassette tapes stayed around a long time after CDs.
Yeah. They stayed around. I mean, I had some when I was younger. You're talking the early '90s at that point, but I think it was just because my parents were cheap. Because they didn't know the whole CD thing, and I'm sure cassette tapes were really getting down there in price as CDs were getting, more popular.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that anybody else really had them. I think it was just product of a cheap mid '90s parent.
Well, for a while in stores, you could buy the same album
Yeah.
on CD or cassette.
Mm-hmm.
It was strange.
And I'm sure at a certain point you could buy it on vinyl, 8-track, and maybe cassette at a certain point too, or something.
Yeah, well, the LPs, the vinyl LPs, they stayed around for a long time. It was more like collectors and
Sure.
people that liked them.
Mhm.
But for I think there's some acoustic qualities people like. I always thought CDs sounded pretty crisp.
They lose a lot of audio. They lose a lot of stuff that, because it's a compact kind of sound.
Mhm.
I mean, not the disc is compact, but the audio itself is kind of reduced, and it sounds good, of course, but there's more potential to it that just wouldn't fit on a CD. But people want to hear the whole song. Most people want to hear the whole song as opposed to wanting the full audio that you might get. I don't know if it was a bigger file or something like that, which was always the problem with MP3s as well.
Right.
When that came around,
Mhm.
people, it lost audio quality. It lacks low end or mid range or high end or whatever the case might be. And there's it's nice that these people that really care about the quality of the audio kind of have more of an outlet of that with digital
Mhm.
music, where if they want a bigger file that has more of that audio presence, then they can get it. And
I think
it takes up more space.
Doesn't Amazon? I'm sure there's a lot of places, but does Amazon have like an HD
Probably.
music collection or something like the high
Probably.
fidelity or
Yeah, probably.
or whatever the
I
term
think there's
is.
one called, it might be called Tidal or something, that all they do is high quality, and it's very important, and the difference can be noticeable for sure, but it's very important to some people. Other people, the vast majority of people, just don't care. They just
Mhm.
want to hear the music,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there was automobiles that were manufactured in that time had a 6 CD changer in the trunk,
Yeah,
so you'd have
or
to.
underneath the seat,
Yep.
or somewhere in the dash somehow. Yeah,
Yeah, times have definitely changed. Yeah, changed a lot. But yeah, so in my lifetime, I started with LPs and other vinyl, and then 8-track for a little bit, cassettes, and now or CDs, and now I guess streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Computer files were big for a while,
Yeah, right.
and then
Yeah, MP3 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that age would last a long time. I never thought that streaming would encroach on that. But
Yeah, it's true. The accessibility of the internet, no matter where you're at, really
Yeah.
made streaming
well,
possible.
the media would run stories when the internet was relatively new, like in the 90s when it existed before that, but like when people started using it.
Gaining traction.
Yeah. And they would say, oh, the internet's going to be maxed out in like 30 days or 6 months. And like, oh, we better not get too attached to this. It's going to, and look,
Right.
it never happened.
Right.
If anything, it's expanding.
Yeah, rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. So connectivity, which used to be a big problem, is now like you just expect to have it everywhere.
Yeah.
I can still remember like AOL, you had to dial in to it was like a modem.
Yeah.
You have to have a phone line. Of course, you couldn't use your phone.
Right. While that was
Mhm.
using the phone line.
Yeah.
Many people can still hear that sound of dialing in just at the mention of it. Yeah, they close their ears automatically. No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. But, it was corny and slow, but it was also revolutionary
Yeah.
at the time.
Right.
To have
That's very true.
internet in a house.
Be connected to millions, billions of people, like automatically.
Mm-hmm. And the chat rooms were, they spread very quickly. They were very popular. There's a few murder cases I've covered that involved the early adopters of AOL
Yeah.
in the chat room. They found a lover usually,
Right.
and then there was a conspiracy or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, with true crime, these technologies find their way into the world of true crime. But
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I don't know how we got there from D&D, but
yeah, I think we thoroughly answered the question, given we know nothing about the topic. Yeah.
I'm sure that people who play D&D use technology with it as well somehow. I'm sure there's a connection there. Right. Oh, man. You ready for the next question?
Yeah, here we got.
All right. So this one was directed at me. Jeff, can you give a definition of OCD in a short? Thanks so much. So OCD is characterized by intrusive thoughts that are distressing and take considerable time in somebody's life. And or one could be enough for a diagnosis, or the compulsions could. Compulsions being a physical or mental act that is intended to take away the distress, to neutralize or take away the distress. The examples of this, of course, are endless. Intrusive thoughts, everyone has intrusive thoughts. It's the weird, strange thoughts that pop in your mind. What if I ran this person off the road when I'm driving? What if I kicked this dog that just walked past me? What if I hurt somebody? What if I do something horrible to somebody? What if I'm not real? What if I'm actually a murderer? What if I want to harm myself, etc. The sky's the limit there.
And safety, right? Like, what if this catches fire?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Where will I live? My house burns down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like a lot of catastrophizing thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. It could be, of course, related to germs as well.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, the stereotypical one.
Yeah.
What if I catch a disease from touching this thing or doing this thing and I die? Or what if I give that disease to somebody else? It's usually not about the person getting harmed. It's usually about them harming somebody else in some way, especially with germs as well. There's a ton of different things. What if I am using too much electricity and I'm the cause of global warming? Or what if I'm the worst person in the world and I'm going to end up hurting people? So anything. Now, we all get those kind of thoughts from time to time. And the difference here is that somebody with OCD, it causes them a great deal of distress, and they focus on these thoughts. They react to these thoughts, and that's what really completes the cycle. When they have the thought, they do something about it, the compulsion. Do something mentally or physically to try to take away or neutralize the distress, the anxiety, the fear that they're experiencing. So if I have this intrusive thought that I'm going to catch a disease if I touch this table, I might do something as simple as avoiding touching that table. You might go beyond that to, I'm not even going to look at this table. And ultimately, I'm not even going to say anything with the letter T in it, because what if that is so close to me touching this table? And the mental gymnastics, the kind of rumination and overthinking that goes into somebody's mind when they're experiencing OCD is astounding and completely just out there. I mean, people who experience this are like, I feel like I'm crazy because I'm just doing so much in my mind, and it's exhausting too. They are, even people that are so severe in this that they're not doing anything, they're just bedridden. They'll always say, I'm exhausted all the time because stuff is running through their mind so much, and it is an awful, terrible way to live. Unfortunately, OCD has one of the highest causes of self-harm as a result of all of this, because these are many things that people don't want to talk about. They might be sexual in nature, they might be harm-based, especially for someone that they love. And they don't want to talk about it because it's distressing, and they're afraid if I talk about it, it'll come true. Or if I talk about it, it will happen. Or something, there's this connection between their thoughts and reality, a thought-action fusion, as they say. So it's a terrible, terrible disorder, misunderstood, of course, by many people. I'm thankful that there's many organizations and campaigns and companies that are seeking to change that misunderstanding of it. Howie Mandel has a campaign, commercials and things going with a company called No CD, who I work for a few hours a week. And on national TV and ads that I've seen online that are really getting out there. People, a recognizable person in Howie Mandel, telling people what OCD actually is and what it actually is not. So I'm thankful for that kind of messaging. And what I love about treating OCD is is that everyone that has it, they just want to feel better. They just want to care about their life. They want to experience a better life that they have not experienced in potentially a long time. And it's so evident when somebody understands, I don't have to do anything with these thoughts. Whereas before they were doing compulsions, they were taking so much of their life to try to fix what's going through their mind. And that moments that they start to realize, I don't have to do anything with these thoughts. I don't have to react to them. I don't have to take them seriously. I don't have to be involved in these thoughts. I don't have to live in my head anymore. It's just such a life-altering moment that they have clarity, that they can understand I can still do the things I want to do, even though I have these distressing thoughts. And it's an incredible thing to see recovery from OCD, and it's a terrible thing to see somebody just diving into this life of fear and the kind of fear that they experience all day long. So I appreciate all the efforts from everybody that treats OCD, that advocates for it, and there's for anybody that's interested, there's all across the country and all across the world, the International OCD Foundation is they have different fundraising walks, different walks throughout the year for advocacy, for understanding of OCD, for fundraising and things like that. There's one happening in or around Philadelphia the end of September that I'll be at, and there's a few happening in Pennsylvania and a few happening all over the country. So if it's something of interest to you, I would highly recommend getting involved in the International OCD Foundation, IOCDF, or any foundation that might support something like that, because it's a cause that I really appreciate, and obviously personal to me for what I do, but I appreciate the advocacy of it.
Yeah, OCD is, in a world of disorders that sometimes have a lot of overlap, right? Like we look at like depression, and it could be major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder. Mm-hmm. It could be a depressive phase of bipolar disorder. Right. It's like
pervasive
many,
in a lot of things.
Yeah, there's many disorders that you sit there and you're like, all right, let me just go through these criteria. It's going to take me a while.
Right.
OCD, there's some confusion. I can, anxiety, panic disorder, obviously obsessive compulsive personality disorder can be confused. But generally, it does have that kind of a distinct component. So like as a counselor, you usually know when it's in play. Mm-hmm. And it's those checking rituals that no other disorder really has in the same way. Where the compulsions, people think, well, they're designed to satisfy the obsession. And they do appear to be, but often they actually make it worse.
It's a broken promise that I'm going to feel, and you will feel some relief for a little bit until you don't. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to come back with a vengeance because it completed that cycle. And now the fear feels justified in your mind, and the fear grows every time you justify it.
Right. Yeah, it's not, some of the rituals, I've seen so many throughout my career, but the ones that really have struck me in particular are the counting rituals that are based on a certain number. Right. Like 2 or 3 or 7, or sometimes 15 or 30. Right. And they're not even doing something related to the danger, like checking a doorknob or a stove. They're just touching something or buying something in threes.
Right. It has to feel just right. And that just right is so subjective.
Or pumping fuel and trying to get to a 3 in the number. How is that going to help you? It's totally detached from the obsession at that point.
Right. There's nothing logical about it. Right. But still, it has to feel just right, and what just right feels like in my mind at that moment is going to be different every time. Right. And it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah, OCD is also one of those, like if you look at the case studies, I think I did a video a while back on an OCD case study. You can see just life-changing improvement in a day. Yeah. And there's no other disorders like that. Mm-hmm. But what they don't tell you in the case studies is it will come back. Like you do have to, it's a fight that continues. Right. But once you learn, which can be quickly or take a long time, once you learn to not do the compulsions, relief is usually not that far away. Right. That's the moment where people are like, I'm just not going to do them.
Right. There's an intentionality. People often think that they have to make more effort to take the intrusive thoughts away. And the goal is never to take the intrusive thoughts away or to take the anxiety away. And it's never to put more effort into it. It is the intentionality that's required to recognize whatever the thought is that's in my mind, I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to analyze it, try to figure it out or understand it. I'm not going to do anything with this thought. The intentionality of actually, I'm not going to do anything right now, but what I would normally do anyway. So if I was going to go watch TV, you know, I'm going to have thoughts, and I'm going to go watch TV while I'm having thoughts, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to go cook dinner. I'm going to go for a walk, whatever.
Well, and I think there's a point of recklessness, right, where like the person feels like they're being reckless, but they're really not.
Absolutely.
And the stakes can be very high. Like people think, well, all right, if you're afraid of your house igniting from your oven,
Burning down, yeah.
then get a smoke alarm and a fire extinguisher, and you have insurance, and it's awful, but let it burn down, right? But sometimes it's worse than that. Sometimes it's like going to burn in hell forever.
Right.
Morality OCD, this religious OCD. So it's hard to be completely reckless and just say, I don't care, like whatever. Like I can't deal with this anymore. I'm just not going to do the compulsions, whatever may happen. They get trapped in that fear.
You're absolutely right. And reckless is a good way to describe that. Burn in hell, the existential nature of that, the morality of sin. Maybe I'll give someone a disease and kill them, someone I love or something. And even harming children.
Right.
Obviously another word for that'll demonetize the video. But harming children is one of those ones that nobody wants to talk about for obvious reasons. And it is the most difficult at times for that reason, because nobody wants to live with the chance that they would harm children.
Right. And nobody wants to admit that even to a therapist.
Right.
Because just even admitting that thought occurred makes them feel dirty and
what if
bad
that is true because I just talked about it?
Right.
Or what if,
They're giving life to something they'd rather be dead.
They feel like they're giving power by talking to it, And the thing is that, and this is a conversation I have in sessions all the time, because you talked about it doesn't make it any more or less true. Because you thought it doesn't make it any more or less true. I could harm children. That's a possibility. Anybody could. It's always a possibility for anybody. Just like it's always a possibility that you could die anytime you get into a vehicle. But you take that chance. You don't usually think about it, but you know, there's a chance that you could, for sure, some point in your life. And by accepting that the thoughts are going to be there does not mean I want the thoughts, I like the thoughts, I want certain outcomes. It just means I have thoughts. And whether I accept those thoughts and don't do anything about them or not, that uncertainty does not change. It's there, period, for the rest of your life, no matter what. Which, again, does not mean I will, I won't, I do, I don't, I want to, I don't want to. It just means it's a possibility. I don't want that possibility, but I also can't do anything about that uncertainty. So I'm going to live my life like normal with uncertainty, like we all do. And that's just what it's going to be. You really have no other option. You can sit there and be in your head for the rest of your life and just ruin your whole life. Allow those thoughts to take over. Or you can just live your life the way you want to. You're still going to have uncertainty and intrusive thoughts. But you'll be living your life and you'll be able to enjoy life more. If you just, if you allow that. And it's very difficult, of course, extremely difficult. But it is essential for those millions of people who experience that to do nothing with those intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, it's very tough. OCD is very, like I said, it's very distinct. Yeah. And now, unfortunately, it's also comorbid with anxiety disorders. And so
depression.
Yeah, you have a lot of other concerns that sometimes come up. And I've seen OCD cases that are just horrifying. Just horrifying. And I think, too, the illness, like anxiety disorders, the illness makes it difficult for people to seek therapy.
Right. Absolutely.
Works against that process.
Right.
So just like, schizophrenia, just like many mental disorders, really, a lot of them get in the way of actually going and
getting help.
Yeah. Substance use.
Right. There's a subset of those with OCD that have gotten it from an infection. and so there's PANS and PANDAS are the acronyms for it. And the onset of symptoms comes from an infection. And there's been cases of that happening because of COVID that I've experienced and heard about, and among other things, strep and things like that happen when people are younger, but also happen in adulthood as well. And this is an area of research that's happening that definitely needs more research. But it is a very misdiagnosed area of this, because it's very costly and time consuming to figure out if that's the case, but potentially deadly, because people are doing all these things, and often OCD treatment does not necessarily work in that case, because the underlying cause of it in that case is not taken care of. So there's a lot of aspects to it that are very difficult.
Well, I think you answered that question much better than we answered the.
I appreciate you allowing me to go on that one. Maybe one day I'll know more about D&D than our answer. Oh boy! All right, next one. Dr. Grande, can you please do an episode, or at least speculate, on people with an irrational fear that the government will force them to live in the state of New Jersey against their will for the rest of their lives? Horrifying, of course.
It's a real problem. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I try to weave New Jersey jokes in whenever New Jersey is mentioned, right? And some people are like, they get mad, like, "Oh, New Jersey is a great state." Yeah. Well, of course, there's good things about New Jersey. I'm joking. It's humor, right? But I think when you live in Delaware, and traveling New Jersey is pretty much always unpleasant, because you got that toll to cross over, and it's a lot different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of industry, and I realize that there's other areas without industry, but when you're going up the Turnpike, up 295, you see a lot of industry. Northern New Jersey is the most densely populated area of the United States. 900 people per square mile, I think it is. Right? That might be the whole state, but they're concentrated in the upper half.
Right. Close to New York City and
like Bayonne and Newark and Elizabeth and Jersey City, and there's just a ton of people, a ton of traffic, and New Jersey drivers I wouldn't rate them as good.
Notorious. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some things. I've seen some things in New Jersey with driving. I just don't know how these people got a driver's license.
Yeah.
Like the driver, just unbelievable things. So it's like, if you think about in a sense, it's like high speed New York City, right? Like New York City is tough to drive in because people are willing to hit you, right? They're willing to run into you and just keep driving.
Right.
But New Jersey is like a high-speed version of that, where you don't want to make contact, where they don't want to hit you, because it's just different. It's just a different culture.
Right.
But it's not fun. It's not fun to visit a lot of areas in New Jersey. But there are some that are nice.
Right.
Like visit Ocean City. You could even argue parts of Atlantic City.
Right.
Like Margate.
You have the Jersey Shore, not the show, of course, but you have the Jersey Shore, and a lot of people like to go at the beaches there.
Yeah.
Or the shore there, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I never saw the appeal.
I'm not a beach guy, so I don't really care about it. But.
I like beaches okay. I just never saw the appeal with New Jersey specifically. But yeah, I mean, look, it's an interesting state. It's I think that you have a different perspective on it when, like I said, when you live in Delaware.
Sure.
It's just New Jersey's just not like you hear about something like, oh, it's in New Jersey, or they live in New Jersey, or we have to go to New Jersey. That's not what you want to hear. That's not like Pennsylvania. I don't mind going to Pennsylvania.
No, especially the part that borders Delaware, most of it anyway. I mean, you get close to Philadelphia, of course, but the other parts around, to the west of Philadelphia, I grew up in that area, and it's a great place, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of Delawareans look at Pennsylvania as a great state and really a necessary state for us. Like, has the airport.
Yeah.
And Longwood Gardens. And all kinds of places that we would regularly go as Delawareans.
Right. Access to Lancaster as well.
Lancaster, I go there quite often, buy furniture. So New Jersey, though, is just, to us, just very unnecessary.
Yeah. People only ever work there or go through there,
Mm-hmm.
by and large from Delaware.
Yeah. And I think, too, like, whenever you travel to New York City, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, you're going through, you're running the turnpike
Mm-hmm.
all the way from the Delaware Memorial Bridge to, like, the George Washington, wherever you,
Right.
wherever you're going to cross over. And it's just a monotonous
Yeah.
drive. It's just not,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of pleasant memories, I think, associated with it. But obviously, I recognize there's nice areas of it, and there's very expensive areas,
Yeah.
like Fort Lee, right? Very, wealthy communities. I think the other thing too that's shocking about New Jersey for a Delawarean is the property taxes up there.
Hmm.
They're through the roof. It's inconceivable
Yeah.
how they can be so high. Now the home values are lower
Yeah. Right.
than you'd see in Delaware.
Yeah.
But that,
But proportionately with the taxes, I mean, it's, yeah.
yeah, you can pay your house off eventually. You can never outrun those property taxes.
Right. I guess even if I've made one, my son's picked up on it. I guess I've made enough New Jersey jokes that every time we mention New Jersey, our son, who's 5, is like, I don't want to go to New Jersey. He doesn't know what New Jersey is. He doesn't know what states are. He has no idea of anything that we're even talking about. But his go-to right now is, not New Jersey. I don't want to go there. We're not going to live there, are we? What do you do? We look back and we're like, where did this come from? And
Where did this anti-New Jersey sentiment come from?
And I guess it came from me, so I'll take responsibility. But he took that pretty far because I never said any of that stuff.
Well, something else when you live in Delaware is that it's not unusual to have dealings in Manhattan. Manhattan's a
Sure.
borough of New York City.
Right.
Very popular, a lot of things to do, theater, like just tons of things to do. And you watch, and it's not really interacting with Manhattan, but you watch like SNL, and that's filmed
Right.
In New York City and Manhattan. But you go up there and you deal with people in Manhattan, and they often hate New Jersey, right? It's a very
It's a
common
mutual thing.
Yeah, it's very common. So they're getting it from both sides, from Delaware and from
And
from
from
New York.
Pennsylvania too. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
From all sides. Yeah.
I really like Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state that I could live in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind living there.
Oh, it's a great place.
It really is. There's just a lot of diversity.
Right. Absolutely.
You can live in the country. You can live in the city. Like, there's so
Right.
much to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just never felt the same way about New Jersey.
Yeah.
I would never, ever want to live there. Ever.
Like now, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if it's the last place on earth, I would.
And of course, there's many jokes that people make about. I think The Onion made one about, or had a story about, somebody cutting New Jersey off from the U.S. and just allowing it to float out into the Atlantic, or just this image of New Jersey being just physically detached from the rest of the U.S. and just,
Would anybody visit? If you had to fly there, would anybody visit it?
I think actually the New Jerseyites, New Jerseyans would might feel okay about that. Like, you know what? We're just like somebody in Texas probably would. We're over here. You guys can be over there. We're gonna hang out. We're good. All right, don't worry about it. We're good. All right. Anybody wants to come over? That's fine. We're probably not gonna go over there. No big deal. Let's just hang out here. Now, of course, any New Jersey advocate would make the point about the different sections of New Jersey,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
right? So North Jersey, of course, like you said, very populated,
Industrialized.
very dense, yeah. And Central Jersey, you've got Trenton, which of course their slogan, Trenton.
The world takes what Trenton
makes, the world
something.
takes.
What
the
Trenton
world
makes, the world takes.
yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
It's on
it
a
is.
bridge when you.
Yeah,
when you
right.
cross
The
it.
very industrial looking
Oh,
area,
yeah. Yeah, it looks like the apocalypse.
It does
Yeah.
because it's all this
Rusted steel.
rusted steel. Yeah, all this.
Exactly.
It's supposed to look very industrial. Now, of course, industry. Nowhere in the U.S. is industry what it used to be. So Trenton used to have a lot more going on there with steel.
A lot of jobs in Trenton at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But nonetheless, that's kind of the Central Jersey, at least from my knowledge, the Central Jersey perspective. Trenton makes, the world takes. Yeah, industry, hardworking, that kind of thing. Not as densely populated, of course, as North Jersey. Just a different world is what people from Central Jersey usually say. And then, of course, Southern Jersey, much less populated
Farmland, yeah.
than
Yeah.
anywhere else, of
A
course.
lot of farmland.
And there is good reason why the Garden State is the name for New Jersey. A lot of farm over there, a lot of farming over there, and they provide a lot of crops for surrounding areas. And anybody from Jersey is going to argue that their tomatoes are the best, their blueberries are the best, their corn is the best, whatever they can argue.
There's a place, what's it called? Cowtown?
Yeah.
Cowtown. You can buy
right.
like the fresh fruits and
A
vegetables.
well-known kind of farmer's market type thing.
I think it's on Route 40, right?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
So anybody who's from New Jersey, anybody that cares about New Jersey, of course, has heard all the jokes, and they've got to accept it at some point. But they're still going to go to bat for New Jersey, and they're gonna inevitably say, no, don't think of North Jersey when you think of New Jersey. Think of the Pine Barrens. Think of the shore. Think of the farmland. Think of all those things, trying to build it up.
Mm-hmm.
But that image of I don't want to live in New Jersey, it just sticks.
Yeah. I think, maybe there's some confirmation bias. Like maybe we see stories and they're in New Jersey. Another thing, and this has nothing to do with it, but there are, because there's a lot of people there, there's a lot of true crime there.
Yeah.
And I think that only kind of reinforces
Right.
another case
The
from New
image,
Jersey. And because it's so populated, it has so much industry and commerce, a lot of people have a connection to it. Like, oh, I was born there. Oh,
Right.
I have family that lives there.
Right.
There's a lot of people. It's a popular place that way. But yeah, I think, if you lived in Texas or California or Illinois or somewhere, your attitude toward New Jersey might be different than if you live right next to it.
Yeah.
Right across a waterway,
Yeah. I do appreciate the highway system there. Turnpike, 295. They obviously have a huge emphasis on. We know a lot of people are just going from south to north or north to south.
That's right.
And we're going to really hone in on it, right?
And make money.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've got multiple lanes, many lanes. They've got an area. Trucks go this way, cars go that way.
In the upper part, right? Northern part.
And 295 parallels the turnpike for a lot
ways.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they've got the driver in mind, and obviously the stereotypically bad drivers
Yes.
in New Jersey. So, but I do appreciate their focus on let's keep this moving, let's keep these cars moving. So
I feel like
they've
New
got that
Jersey,
going.
also more so than other states, targets out-of-state drivers for tickets.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So they usually leave you alone on the turnpike. So if you're going to pay them,
Right. I don't care.
Usually it's not as bad, but on the other roads,
If you're avoiding the toll on 295.
if you're running 295 to get around, because you could take 295 up to like Bordentown and catch the turnpike there.
Right around Trenton. Yeah.
And save yourself a lot of money. I think it's like was it exit 57? It used to be. I don't know, whatever. But
Yeah.
you can go up there and just kind of you're on like a regular road for a surface street for a little bit,
Right.
and then you catch the turnpike. But you're more vulnerable on 295
Right.
for tickets.
That's for sure. All right, New Jersey.
New Jersey. Yep.
What resources are available for crisis workers so they don't burn out or begin to suffer from compassion fatigue? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, I think really, unless you see a ton of clients, you normally shouldn't get compassion fatigue. I think part of it's where if you see like a high proportion of clients that have really terrible circumstances, like there's certain counseling agencies that work with people who've been victims of terrible crimes, that's going to be harder, more concentrated in terms of hearing terrible stories. But normally you should be okay. I think that supervision is probably the best weapon against that. To have a supervisor and have somebody to kind of talk about like maintaining the boundaries. Counseling is a tough profession in that we really ask for kind of contradicting elements. We want counselors to be highly empathic,
Right.
and understand cognitively what other people are feeling, right? And that's a skill that can bleed over into sympathy, to feeling the same way as somebody else feels, and that leads to compassion fatigue. if you're empathetic, you're actually cold in a sense.
Sure.
You don't look cold. You don't act cold.
Right.
You actually act warm and inviting and understanding. But it is a cold skill.
Sure.
It's a clinical,
You have to know exactly what you're doing at that moment, but
right.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not fuzzy and friendly. It's I'm seeing behavior, I'm hearing words, and I'm cognitively understanding what feeling is going on. I'm communicating that back.
I'm not feeling it necessarily.
Right.
I'm not feeling
I'm
it.
not feeling it. Right.
But I'm aware of what you're feeling, or I'm understanding what it is, and helping you through that.
Yeah. And you think, counselors are expected, I think, to be friendlier.
Sure.
And all that. So there's like this, and when I say friendlier, I mean kind of like sympathizing a little bit.
Sure.
Like they're expected to react more strongly to like, oh, I'm telling you this terrible story about what happened to me, or my mood or my feelings, and people can be disappointed if you don't do that. Yet, if somebody went to a hospital and they were talking to a surgeon, they wouldn't want the surgeon to like have intense reaction.
Right.
they need them to be cold and I'm going to fix
Right to
this
the point.
mechanically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to, I know what blood vessels to whatever reconnect or whatever they do, and bones to put back together, plates to put in. I know how to do it, and we'll get you out of here. Whatever. I think people still want maybe a little bit of sympathy.
Sure. Right. Good bedside manner.
Right. But with counselors, I think, I think there is a pressure, and you have to resist that pressure as a counselor. Because you can't. You can do it a few times, but you will. The more you use that sympathy, the faster you're going to burn out.
Right. Sure.
You don't want to feel that way, right? It's not healthy. Cognitively understanding and communicating is enough, and I think that's where supervision really comes in.
Yeah.
Supervisors are, not that they're necessarily any better than you.
Right.
Right. That's not the point. It's having another person.
Right. It's kind of like the difference between just talking to a friend about your problems and talking to a third party, a counselor, that is going to be as objective as they can be. It's important to talk to friends about stuff, but kind of putting that on somebody else that's not really prepared to
and we can't talk about certain things anyway.
Yeah.
So
not really prepared to take that. That's kind of what I see as the role of a supervisor, is that somebody who you can talk to about these things, and they're going to understand it. They're going to try to help you through it, and that's what they're there for. As a third party, is somebody kind of from the outside that doesn't have a stake in the game necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that can kind of allow you to process those feelings in an ethical way, because it's permitted. You're allowed to talk to your supervisor about material. It's one of the exceptions to confidentiality, but they have to keep it confidential, so it's still contained.
Confidential.
Yeah, and sometimes clients will say, because I've supervised a lot of people in my career, and they'll say to like a supervisee, "Well, I don't want you telling your supervisor." That's some of the worst advice.
Yeah, you don't want me getting better at this.
Yeah, it's so what I tell supervisees to tell clients is, no, you do, because it makes me better at what I do, and it would be downright incompetent, not to.
Right.
So but then and also reassure them, like, I get it, like you're worried, and all that, but supervision is a cornerstone of the counseling profession, and probably the best weapon against burnout, other than like quality training.
Right. So. Right. And boundaries, like you said. Yeah. Now, this question says, what resources are available for crisis workers? And I don't know if they meant necessarily counselors or beyond that. Might be somebody that responds to like a police officer or ambulance tech or ambulance driver or a physician for that matter, or anybody that's frontline in anything like that. So, but I think the point stands for, you can't just keep that. You got to have boundaries. You got to take time off when you need it. You need to talk to people when you need it to, people you can trust, people that are trained to handle this kind of information and discussion. And you got to have boundaries. You know, you can't work as a crisis worker 12-hour shifts and expect to feel totally okay after that. You know, like obviously many nurses and physicians, I'm sure too, work 12-hour shifts. And, you know, you have to really prepare. I think you really have to prepare for that. You can't just work 12 hours and be like, oh, I'm just going to get a few hours of sleep and then just go right back and do it again. I'll be perfectly fine. Not only the physical aspect of it, but the emotional aspect of it. I saw someone die, or I experienced someone that was, you know, suffering so terribly, and the medication wasn't working or whatever. That has the potential to eat somebody up inside. If you don't talk about it, if you don't address it, if you don't work through it, if you don't have some way of kind of unloading that a bit. So it's not just weighing on you. And that same thing, of course, goes for counselors. Whatever we hear, of course, whatever we work on in the sessions with the client, we have to make sure that, like you said, we're not taking it, it's not transferring over to us. Because, of course, if we can't help people, then we can't do our job. And therefore, people don't get better if we can't be present for them.
And ultimately, and I think one of the hardest lessons to learn is that the sympathy is actually bad for the client. When you show sympathy, it wears you down, yes, and it's bad in the long run for you, yes, but it actually hurts them too.
Right.
It's an unrealistic expectation, and it's not therapy. That's the bottom line.
It creates the wrong dynamic, and makes them sometimes dependent on you for that.
Yeah. If you think about, like, you know, one of the rock stars of the psychotherapy professional identities is Carl Rogers. And in a sense, you know, Carl Rogers became famous for being authentic, but not for being warm. Not really. He was cold. If you look at the videos, there was an inauthenticity in his effort to be authentic. If you interpret it, like, you could interpret it as inauthentic.
Sure.
But in another sense, he was being authentically cold and mechanistic with his interpretations. They were something, you know, a computer could have generated.
Sure.
And now there's actually software that do that. But yeah, I think that it's interesting to look at him, because you can think of him as authentic or inauthentic depending on your perspective. And at some level, you know, what we do is really, there's a human component to it, but it is input and output. It's input through a processor.
Right.
And that processor, you know, our brains, they're complex. And they certainly involve feelings. And accounting for feelings, but not necessarily our feelings. Another possibility people should keep in mind is that you can incorrectly sympathize. You can have a feeling that misses the mark.
Right.
And if you do that with empathy, the client can correct you. Oh, no, I'm not feeling sad. I was actually joking. Oh, okay. But if you feel it, now you're going way down that path.
Right.
It was the wrong. It was the wrong feeling.
You're in a different place than the client at that point, and you've done more harm than good, for sure.
Yeah. So, yes, sympathy is. Well, like Star Wars. We're not a Star Wars fan, but, you know, Star Wars has the light and the dark sides of the Force. The dark side, I guess you could argue, is like the easier way, but it's evil, you know.
Right.
And that's sympathy. It's the dark side. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Well said. So this next one, perhaps similarly, could you all talk about some about empathy? How is it learned, and is there a window or age range for learning empathy?
Yeah. So people come with empathy by default, is our hope.
Yeah.
But it is a skill that you can improve through training.
Yep.
Some people who are like highly psychopathic, for example, they don't have the affective empathy, but they still have the cognitive. But they have no desire to use it.
But they don't know how to display it or can't.
They're not going to use it, right?
Yeah.
They have no interest in using it. So or maybe for manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
But assuming somebody's not psychopathic, everybody has it. And the question really is, do you know how to use it, and is it accurate?
Mm.
And that's really, I think, what the counseling training, one part of counseling training is focused on, accurate empathy. And that was actually one of the core conditions for Carl Rogers. We talked about him, and person-centered therapy was his modality.
Mm-hmm.
Accurate empathy.
Mm.
He was about being accurate.
Right.
Not sympathizing, not crossing boundaries, but accurately relaying the emotion that he's observing.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that, I think that it just takes years of training
Mm-hmm.
to reliably have accurate empathy.
Yeah.
They talk about natural, like, oh, that person's a natural counselor. I've never seen that.
Natural empath,
Right?
you might say.
Never
Yeah.
seen it. Yeah, never seen anybody. It's a skill. It's like saying somebody's a natural engineer. You might have a predisposition for math, but you have to learn engineering.
Yeah, you might have more empathy than other people.
Mm.
You might be more inclined to that. But
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, but good listener is not the same thing as,
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
in my years, I've seen a lot of people come into counseling programs and apply for counseling programs, and you always hear the same thing. People tell me I'm a good listener, I should be a counselor.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Not impressed.
Yeah.
There's, I think what's more impressive from somebody applying is I'm willing to learn what you have to teach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to understand that right now I have no idea
Yeah.
what might be involved in this.
Which at that stage in the game, somebody asks you, why do you want to be a counselor? And the feel-good answer is kind of what the default is. Like you said, well, I've been told I'm a really good listener, and people come to me with their problems
Yes.
and whatever else.
That's
and
not-
that sounds like boundary crossing,
Yeah.
if nothing else.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
it's a valid thing. So you might as well just say, I want to help people. Okay, fair enough. But at that stage in the game, you're not really thinking, I want to put in all the hard work here to understand people better and to understand how I can understand them better. I want to put in all the hard work of, having clients be mad at me and getting pissed off because I, called them out on something. I want to get close to that edge of compassion fatigue. That's not the answer that people want to say at that moment.
No.
But that's the reality of it, is that, like any job, there's a lot that you have to learn and understand and be able to, skills that you need to be able to develop.
Yeah, we joke, one of the running jokes with the murder part is the counseling's a terrible career and like a last, And I don't think that, obviously,
Right.
again, it's humor. It's like New Jersey, we're just kidding.
Yeah.
Sort of with New Jersey. But, there's a truth to it that it's a challenging profession.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not lifting heavy boxes, right? It's not installing 2x4s and
Right.
framing houses.
Not
and stuff.
physically demanding in that
Right.
way. Yeah.
But it is challenging to learn, and to stay good at it, and to be ethical requires constant learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just the school; it's
That's true.
and not just the continuing ed. It's more than that.
Right. Right.
And I
Learning
think-
in every session.
Yeah, and I think also like growing, developing as a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that you may be good now,
Right.
but you might be able to be better later,
Right.
and be open to that. Not that I'm against the idea of like always being eager to change, because again, you might be good, but be open to the idea. Like,
Right.
can I learn something new?
Yeah.
Will it help me?
Mm-hmm.
It's really all the therapeutic identities I think are challenging that way.
Sure.
So,
I had a friend once who, I don't remember what the degree program they did was, but it involved some aspect of at least understanding what counseling is. So it wasn't a counseling degree, but it was something where they had to practice counseling each other or something.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but that's what they did. And one time this friend made a comment. They were describing doing this degree program, which does not exist anymore, by the way, and I think that's pretty telling about it. This program does not exist. It was at University of Delaware. And they said, oh, we did this counseling practice. It was fun, And once I heard that, I discounted the whole degree program Because I'm like, if you think this is fun, and certainly there are aspects, you have good therapeutic alliance with people, you get along with them, they're maybe you share similar interests, whatever. I can understand.
Satisfying.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that, sure. But if there's any part of it that you think is fun, then I would venture to say you're doing something wrong, or you're not actually doing counseling. You might just be talking to someone.
Yep.
And once I heard that, I was like, well, that's not what this is.
No.
Nobody should be describing this as fun, satisfying, potentially enjoyable, based on if you have good outcomes for people, that kind of thing. But it really can't be fun, because it would imply maybe that you're just not really doing as much of the work as you should be.
Yeah, and the word counseling gets thrown around a lot.
Right.
Like you'll see people trained in other areas, which is fine. I mean, there's diversity is good. People should have all different types of training, but you see somebody trained in a completely different area and say, "Oh, I was also trained in counseling. I can do that." I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a development process that simply takes years, and there's just no shortcut to it.
Right.
And in an age where a lot of programs have been compressed, like especially like computer, like IT programs, like
Right.
shorter business programs, and I understand you have a certain amount of information,
Right.
so you try to compress it, and if somebody can learn it faster, then that's valid.
Sure.
I have no problem with that. But counseling isn't about let me learn it as fast as I can to get a degree.
Right.
It's a process we have to accept, which you can't change, and your limitations and your strengths. You have to learn what those are, and accept them.
And learn from them.
Yeah, and it takes a while.
It does.
Yeah,
It takes practice.
Yeah, it takes supervision. It takes teaching. It takes openness. So, yeah, it's not like I have a quantity of words that you need to learn.
Right.
I mean, dump the quantity of words. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand some professions are like that. Like computer program. As fast as you can learn it, learn it.
And then you go and apply that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to. There's no existential question.
Right.
With like
Should
C++.
I or should I not computer? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. And then, it says there age range for learning empathy. Certainly when you're young, I think that's probably pretty good age to understand that, teach kids empathy and help them understand. But, and maybe in adulthood, it's a little bit more difficult. Just, learning to do many things are a little bit more difficult in adulthood. But what do you think? Is it age range that might be specific?
I mean, it is learned young in childhood. I think socialization opportunities are critical there. You just have to be exposed to a large number of interactions and see how people react to different things.
Yeah, sure. So school is important for that. Preschool, of course, opportunities where kids can interact with each other. But then getting up into adulthood, of course, college is important for that too, or any after high school, trade, whatever you want to call it, or any job for that matter, where you're understanding other people and what they feel and so forth. I hear about this sometimes. I don't do marriage therapy, but I hear about it sometimes. Somebody who's in a relationship or a marriage will say something like, I was venting to my spouse or my significant other, and they just didn't get it. Like, they didn't understand what I was going through, and they're like, well, just get over it. Just stop doing that, or just, stop thinking that way, or whatever. And the amount of empathy that's required in a relationship for it to be successful, I think is an important thing there too. So all these different aspects of our lives where there's major changes is another opportunity to learn empathy and many other lessons too.
Yeah, and I think that a part of it as well is the absence of personality pathology. If somebody has personality pathology, they're gonna struggle.
Sure.
With not always with cognitive empathy, like I talked about psychopathy, but with some personality pathology, it is affected. All empathy is affected.
Sure.
Cognitive and affective, and again, the desire to use it is affected, and the insight, why should I bother? Sure. Like narcissism.
Yeah.
Why should I have this skill, but why should I use it?
Right. Why is it important? Why is it valid? Yeah. All right. Last one. Can you each comment on your opinions on the death penalty? And I gotta be honest, I haven't really thought much about the death penalty and what I feel about it. I think I would lean more towards I don't think it makes sense, but I can understand an argument for why that may make sense in some circumstances. So I really haven't given it much thought, and thankfully my opinion doesn't matter. So I never really gave it much thought for that reason either.
We
You have any
cover-
thoughts on it?
We cover a lot of true crime, though,
Right.
so
Well, that's true.
I might
You're
be
right, I
thinking,
guess.
like,
Yeah,
does it color your opinion
that's true.
if you feel one way or the other?
That's true.
I've always been opposed to it. There's never been a time in my life, and I've changed my mind about many things, political areas, and liberal versus conservative and everything. But the death penalty is not one of
Remain
those areas.
consistent.
Yeah, I just well, statistically, we know it doesn't reduce crime.
Sure.
So there's that. But my argument's even, I think, beyond that in terms of it's final, and I think that one of the higher desires of the human condition should be to go through this life and never having cost anyone their life, never having killed anyone,
Right.
even in state-sanctioned
Sure.
way.
Well, that's fair.
You wouldn't want to be in an automobile collision where someone else died, right? I mean,
Right.
no one would want that.
Right.
No one would want to obviously murder somebody, or they shouldn't. So, I think the death penalty cheats a lot of people out of that what I consider kind of fundamental human goal, just to live life without having caused death.
Right. That's fair.
And there's other people to consider, right? Like in firing squads, it's not unusual. Like if say I'm making these numbers up, but like say you have like 5 people to hand out like 3 live cartridges instead of 5, because historically, we've learned that if people know that they contribute to death, it's going to affect their mental health.
Sure. Sure.
So this idea, like, I don't even know, or sometimes it's more dramatic. Like there's 5 people and there's only 1 live cartridge. So people could say, well, there's an 80% chance it wasn't me.
Yeah. Right.
I fired a blank. So you have all the people involved in the homicide, in the killing, legal or not, still homicide, and you have the chance that you're wrong. You kill somebody and
Right. Turns out that they were innocent. Yeah.
the state executes them, or the federal government executes them, and they're innocent. I think, it's just something that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't like life in prison either.
Sure.
It's the alternative, and I get that. And I'm not saying you should ban life in prison,
Right.
but I'm not thrilled with it either. It's not like there's some attraction to that. It's just I don't like the death penalty. I wish there was a way that we could prevent the murders. I wish there was a way we could be more humane in life in prison.
Right. Right.
But murder's a complicated issue, and most death penalty cases involve murder. You could also say treason in some various countries and stuff, but including the United States, technically, treason. A person could be executed for treason, but usually we're talking about homicide.
Sure.
Specifically murder. So, yeah, I just never been a fan, and I wish it was not allowed. It was banned, but it is a part of the traditions of some states.
Right.
Texas comes to mind.
Right.
They like their
They do.
executions
They do.
there. But look at a place like California, where it's probably going to be banned forever, or Colorado, where it's probably never coming back. Have they had a drastic increase in murders? Not that can be attributable to that. So, yeah, that's just I think there's room for a lot of opinions. Just
Right.
that's where I stand on it.
Sure. Makes sense when you think of it as state-sanctioned homicide. That puts it in a certain perspective. And of course, ideally, you'd prevent the crime. And if you can't prevent the crime, then the person gets rehabilitated and goes and lives a different life. But you're right. If they get executed, then there's no chance of rehabilitation, of course. And yeah, what comes to mind with what if they were innocent is it's either Naked Gun or Police Squad, where he's going through a filing cabinet and he pulls out there's the evidence from such and such. He was innocent. He went to the chair 2 years ago. Oh, well, So that's, of course, always a possibility. They, science advances, and then you find out at some point later, oh, this person wasn't innocent, but this person got executed years ago. So I think it's a very valid point, and I never heard that point about what it potentially does to the people responsible for that execution, whether they are pushing chemicals through a syringe, whether they're firing something, whether they're doing something different. That's a great point.
Yeah, they're human beings too, right? And some of them, I'm sure, it's volunteer.
Sure.
Like, you're not a prison guard. And they're like, hey, guess what? Today you're going to execute somebody.
You're on execution duty. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they may feel a certain way then, and that changes. Later on, and they're like, wow, I participated in this.
Sure. I wish I had.
Yeah. And having the government, there was one case, I think it's on Patreon. I don't think I released it to the world, but there was a case about this guy who died by firing squad. I think his name was Ron or Ronnie, maybe Utah. I forget where he was, but it was a firing squad execution, and they made commemorative coins for the people who killed him, and they passed them out like,
hey, congratulations,
great time, great memories. Hey, you remember that time we executed that guy with a gun? Oh yeah, that was a special time.
Really special. I want to remember it forever. Let me put this on my mantle. Yeah.
And I want everybody to know I participated in it.
Oh my gosh. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to do.
I don't know why that happened, but it almost feels like they're overcompensating for feelings of guilt.
Yeah,
like, let's go the other way. And we're actually proud of it. We're going to make a coin. What's on the coin? Like, it doesn't make any, like, what's on the coin? What do you put on that
picture
coin?
Of a gun, or I don't know.
Hey, here's me.
Right. There's you. This is an actual picture of you.
Look, they got the muzzle flash in there and everything.
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, then, can you really have pride in the coin because then, like, you do the math, and what if you weren't firing a live round?
Oh boy.
What if you're one of those guys who got the blank?
Right. Coin's worthless.
You
now.
deserve that coin. You were just holding a gun with a blank loaded into it.
You actually didn't do anything. Give me that. Yeah. Oh boy.
We're revoking your coin.
Right. We're taking away your pride in this act you committed. Jeez.
And do you try to collect the whole set? How does that work?
Try to get them all, I guess.
Hey, there was a murder on the news. That means in like 20 years I can get my next coin. Because it takes a while,
Right. Well, I think that's an argument too. Is that they have to feel. I don't know if they have to feel like they're 100% sure this person did it, and it takes a lot of time and court hearings and investigations, and which they'd investigate this stuff anyway. But I think it takes a considerable amount of money more to execute than it does. I think for other.
I think it usually does. Yeah. Yeah. Because they have to exhaust the appeals, and it's automatic appeals. It's not necessarily affordable.
Right.
I think originally in the history of the death penalty, I'm not positive about all of it, but I imagine there was a component of just like it's impractical to keep somebody locked up for a long time.
Sure.
Like back in the Old West, you think there weren't even a lot of prisons, I imagine, right? So it was just easier just to execute, like just everything, every penalty. Oh yeah, that's execution. But now, I mean, you can house somebody for life and you can be reasonably sure that they're not going to escape.
Right.
Although sometimes people do.
Yep.
At the time we're making this video, there's
one in Pennsylvania.
There's a person who killed. Was it 2 people?
One in Pennsylvania and potentially at least one in Brazil. I don't, maybe more. But wanted for 2 wanted for 1 murder and then, or at least 1 murder in Brazil. Got charged with, convicted of the one in Pennsylvania, but it's on the loose right now.
Yeah. This is a strange case. Usually doesn't happen. Usually they stay in there, but yeah, so at the time we're making this video, he's running around
Right.
somewhere and
Escaped the same way as somebody else from that prison as well. Yeah.
Yeah, how's that for learning from their mistakes? Right.
Right. Learning that apparently some of the guys in jail are Spider-Man and just shimmy their way up. Yeah.
Yep. He crawled up. There was these walls that were like I don't know, 4.5 feet apart or whatever.
Well, he's 5 foot, so
He fit
a
right
little
in there.
bit more than 5 feet because his arms were stretched out. So nonetheless,
Yeah.
big enough for a person.
Yeah, 4.5, something like that. It was
Whatever.
hallway, like it was an external hallway, like it was two.
Right.
Yeah, and he went right up, and then I think he made it through 2 series of barbed wire,
Something like that. Razor wire. Yeah.
razor wire. Yeah, razor wire. And they say he's determined. Well, thanks for the update. We're pretty
Right.
sure we understood that
Right.
much.
That was understood.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they find him soon. Obviously, a lot of people working on that, and a lot of residents that are very worried.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the type of thing that does get the death penalty talks going.
That's true.
Right? Like that would have fixed this problem. But although who knows? I mean, he might have had another 15 years of appeals. Yeah.
He already got a life sentence, so obviously that's what he's trying to avoid.
But I mean, if they were pursuing death penalty,
Right.
he would,
Sure, sure.
it wouldn't have been. He would still be.
I think he's still wanted in Brazil. Maybe get extradited at some point. So I don't know how forgiving they are in Brazil, or how much they go towards death penalty or something like that. So I don't know.
It makes me wonder because like Brazil is one of those places where if you commit a crime in the United States and you go there, I think if you marry, used to be this way. If you marry a Brazilian citizen, they won't extradite. But if he's wanted for murder, that's going to be kind of a frosty reception.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know. Where's he going to go? Like that's one of the big problems. I mean, if his plan was to get back to Brazil, well, first of all, it's pretty far away.
Right.
But second of all, you're wanted.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. Although if he went there, maybe he would be convicted there and sentenced there. Maybe he would rather be in prison there.
I don't know.
I can't imagine their prisons are pleasant. Not that in the U.S. they are, but
Right.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So
Well, that's all the questions we got. Yeah,
all the
we
questions for the
appreciate
question part.
appreciate all the questions and keep them coming too, because Mike and I will get to the shorts. We will
Someday.
promise. But yeah, we appreciate being able to go off on tangents like this and and answer questions for the viewing audience as well.
Yep. So that was this episode of the question part.
Yep.
And we'll be back soon with the murder part and alien lizard humanoids. We've got a few on deck. They're pretty interesting that we'll be covering in the upcoming weeks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.